there does seem to be a sort of a cultural divide between the Christian music scene and the secular music scene, even when it gets down to sort of an underground level, and there are connotations attached to both of them. And you used to put records out on a label that is primarily Christian artists, and you're now putting records out on Secretly Canadian, which is not specifically a Christian record label.
Right.
What is your perspective on the difference between those two worlds at the level that you're at, and also what played into your decision to change labels?
First, it's almost as if things have just been, set up for me, and of course I attribute it to the Holy Spirit's lead, and combined with, but very practical things combined with, internal kind of like struggles and decision making as well. But really, it's just I never wanted to be on a Christian label, and I sent our very first demo out to Homestead and Shrimper and Drag City and all the labels I wanted to be on. Nobody responded. Tooth and Nail called me up and said, "Who are you? Are you for real? This is insane. We want to put it out as is." And just the fact that they wanted to do that was extremely impressive to me. I was kind of torn about I was actually not very happy about the Christian, but at the same time, they were like kind of a brand new label, only had a couple releases out of California, and I didn't know much about them. And so I wanted to make sure, well, is the stuff at least going to get into the indie record stores? That's all, from day one, that's all I cared about. And so they had promised me Caroline and all these things. So really, from the beginning, that was all I ever really wanted was, the Christian side of things was not an interest at all. And so, but at the same time, what did happen, looking back, which ended up being a wonderful thing, is it also brought our music into that world, and just infuriated that scene. I mean, just some of the most rude reviews and just outrageously, in the name of Christ.
So
and really, so it was wonderful.
Right.
So I'm actually very happy that it played out that way, although at the time I had no interest in that.
So you said you weren't interested in being associated necessarily with a Christian music label or the Christian music scene. What are the things about it that you find unpleasant, either as a musician or as a Christian? What are the things about it that bother you?
I think it's the this kind of safety zone, this kind of inbred, and it's it's very hard for me even say these things because there's many people involved in these scenes that I care about very much and have great relationships with. So I have to always clarify that it's the industry, because I can easily blame this kind of corporate thing a lot easier, and it really is and it's unfortunate that, and I think it's very deliberate decisions to take all the business practices of major labels and just kind of apply them to this world. So to me there's no turning back. It's inherently flawed.
Right.
It's based on so many bad decisions that I just have no interest in. I remember there was a certain point, and it was certainly never a temptation, but there was a moment when I realized, what, I could, and not that I could have been the Christian Beck, for instance,
right.
as disgusting as that is, and been incredibly wealthy. I mean, what a sick thought. And when I realized, this is as I saw that everybody, there was the Christian this, there was the Christian this, the Christian this, and then you play that role, and I don't even. First of all, I don't blame the kids.
Right.
I think they're the ones who lose. The kids who go out, they just want to hear great music, and they want to listen to something interesting, but it's what's provided, it's what's given that is the real disappointment and the real ripoff. I think the Beatles records were the ones that started really getting me going in terms of, this is really strange stuff. And then from there, in 7th grade, and then started listening to U2 or something, you know.
Right.
But from there, it was quickly, the college radio was when it's, you know, whatever it was on the radio.
That
Husker
post-punk
Du.
environment,
Yeah, yeah,
sort of.
you know, the SST stuff, and started playing that, and just kind of sneaking that. Not that it just sounded bad. It sounded like I shouldn't be listening to it. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Was there any judgment passed in your house about like the devil's music versus non-devil's music?
yeah, there was, well, no, but they made pretend that they tried it for a time. There was this big wait, like, they were never into that. They weren't swayed by these, you know, these kind of trends, these pop
Right.
trends that would go through it. But there was a moment where, and it was really actually very strange because this whole CCM, contemporary
Right.
Christian music scene that has developed. I remember when it was probably late 70s, early 80s, where there was this kind of push through all the churches where, and I think they were trying to develop this scene. I think the scene was trying to be developed, and I don't know if it was by business folk or I don't know how much of a corporate decision it was. Looking back, I actually think it probably was semi-corporate. Anyway, and some of it came out of real, you know, real need. There were many stores that wouldn't sell music by people who talked about Jesus. So it was, yet there was truth behind it, but then it quickly got sick.
Sort of art, I would call art rock, like projects that I think SS Bounty Hunter
Yeah.
or things like that that really surprised me and I think would completely shock anybody that is not Christian.
Well, and that's a little bit what we were talking about before. I think it's people who get caught up, you know, entirely in that scene. I think it's unfortunate for them and for other people who, you know, would really enjoy a lot of the music that they're not going to get to hear. They're not going to get to hear. I mean, I don't know about them, but you know, bands who aren't going to go tour clubs, for instance, because it's,
and why wouldn't they?
you know, it's actually for, I don't know. I mean, I think number one, there's some fear there, you know, but number two, it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier to, you know, go play a church when you're getting a couple $1,000
Right.
and getting, you know, a feast in a hotel, and it's crazy the way people get treated, and it's really, it's almost like this, you know, this carrot that is dangling in front of them that's kind of leading them away from what I think is the very reason. You know, it really is the kind of the easy road. I don't, you know, I'm not going to be casting judgment on
There's sort
people,
of,
but for me, you know, to go the direction of sleeping on floors and stuff really is where you're gonna meet people and where you're gonna bring music to people.
When you guys play, do you feel like there's a difference between how you perform in front of a secular audience or a Christian audience? Is it different for you? Because
Yeah,
it has
I think
been
so.
it's definitely, I know we've had people say.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable in the club scene. I feel mostly because I feel like it's a mix of people, you know, and I don't even make those distinctions to even call it a mix, but you know, people who are coming from, you know, for faith-based reasons, or combined with music, or just people who are just interested in the music or things they've heard or whatever. I'm much more excited about, you know, people coming from different areas being together than an exclusive, you know, corner of people.
Even though that secular scene might possibly result in some negative response.
Oh, but I love it. I love negative. It's all the same to me, and I think I get off on it. Really, I really do. To me, it's the positive and the negative. It's more of an intensity level. I don't really notice if it's positive or negative. It's just like those people, you know, people heckling last weekend. You know, I could tell they were really moved. they were affected, you know, and it's really true. You know, even my earlier bands that were just, you know, more for shock value, it was really just, yeah, there's something exciting about that rise, you know. But this is for a much more exciting purpose too, you know. But any kind of any kind of heckling that's trying to get a rise out of me, you know, how can we offend the Christians? Let's say let's be as perverted as we can be. You know, that'll get him.
Right.
You know, so let's talk about his sisters in a perverted manner. You know, that'll get him to embarrass himself. You know, that kind of stuff. It's like, and meanwhile they're making fools of themselves. You know, and we just keep playing. You know, of course, you know, there's the older brother in me that gets upset and wants to beat him in the head with my guitar. But
you don't find yourself. We've had other people say that they would preach more to a secular audience, and then, like, I think of someone as like Andrew Mendel, someone who would,
okay.
when he's in a secular situation, he does one thing, and when he's
I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about that. I don't know. Maybe I would feel just the opposite, actually. To be honest, I think I'd probably preach more to Christians, just because. I don't know. It's just not preach. I mean, just maybe be a little more hard on them or something. I don't know.
Is that a part of your performing at all to bring?
All through the lyrics. Yeah, I mean, through the lyrics is where everything is for me. You know, I don't really see much point in speaking in between. I mean, you know, I'm already speaking words, and you know, and it's packed full of stuff as far as I'm concerned. So. Plenty of things there.
One of the things that I like about your music is that you don't bother to spell it out for people.
Oh no, that's so boring.
And my favorite records,
insulting.
My favorite bands, my favorite records are always people who there is a germ of an idea there, which is obviously important enough for them to be focusing on it, but they're not going to parse it out into individual segments and like take you by the hand and bring you to the conclusion that they've come to. They want you to have that experience, and that's one of the things that I respect, that I responded to immediately about your music, is that there are all these inside jokes, and there are all these like very specific, very personal references to your own life, things that literally only your family would catch on to.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, there's a thread of continuity there that goes through all the records and through all the different songs that if you listen intently, if you listen to it with the idea that you want to understand it, you can.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Anyway, I don't know, but yeah. I mean, it's the puzzle. I'm very attracted to the puzzle and the notion of discovery is everything, isn't it? I think so. I mean, when I'm listening to records, it's so boring to just have it there.
That might be one thing that people like me, like non-Christians and sort of critical listeners to music, might respond negatively to some of the more dogmatic Christian bands, is that, you know, it's not like I haven't heard the message before.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like this is new material.
Yeah.
You know, and so to have it reiterated to me in a sort of a scolding fashion tends to put me off.
Sure.
And that's the same problem that I have with dogmatic political bands and, you know, bands with an agenda of any kind that's outside their relationship to the music. Is that, you know, if they're trying to convince me of something, you know, nagging is not the way to do it.
Right. Yeah, bothering you into you know.
Have you ever had an experience where you've played a show and someone has had what you would consider a spiritual awakening, and then like credited you with getting him started on thinking about things that way?
I don't know.
I'm asking.
If so, I probably dismissed it very quickly. I don't, you know, because I don't take credit for any of that stuff. So there's certainly been many times that people have, you know, and it happened, you know, in this little tour. I mean, people come up and talk about the music and, you know, talk, and then all of a sudden just say, you know, I'm a non-practicing Catholic. Oh, I didn't ask about you. You know, so it's wonderful, you know, because
it's getting them thinking about it.
Yeah, and whether people even, I don't even know how many of the lyrics were even understood in Germany through this bad microphone, you know. But the fact, you know, but it's all these elements.
I guess we should explain a little bit about our background and where we come from. The majority of our group are graduates of Wheaton College, which is where the band got started, which, as you may or may not know, is this bastion of evangelical fundamentalism. In the Midwest. It's been for Billy Graham, graduated from there. So did Wes Craven, which should also tell you something. But the band was formed as we were coming to grips, I think all of us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Carl, but as we were coming to grips with the fact that how we had been raised and the subculture in which we had been raised was I don't know, how should I put this?
Extreme.
Extreme, facing the fact that a lot of what we have been taught is wrong. Finding ourselves in the middle of this universe and not being able to escape it, and having to come to grips with all of that. So that's kind of how the band formed, and while we were there, we were able to tap into sort of the repressed rage of a lot of the students. It's a true subculture. I was talking with a Jewish friend of mine about this because he was explaining to me some of the some of the underpinnings of the culture that he grew up in, which is tied to ethnicity. Now, the culture we grew up in is a subculture that's not tied to any sort of ethnicity. It's tied to these sort of apocalyptic ideals, which are harebrained. I mean, if you study Christian eschatology, specifically premillennial dispensationalism, that's a kind of home I grew up in. That means rapture theology, that there is going to come this point in time where all of those that have trusted in Jesus Christ are going to disappear, that they're God's elect and that they are set apart. And you saw, if you were at Cornerstone, this kind of separationist subculture. You know, we can't engage in the things of our culture, so we make our own. And if you can't listen to Helmet, well, you can listen to the Christian version of Helmet with nice Christian lyrics.
I think there's something about it that I appreciate in that, you know, these are people who are incredibly sincere in what they believe, and they're trying to find a venue where they can talk about it and where they can express it. And that I respect. And I don't disagree with what they're talking about. What I have a problem with is there's a drive to ape culture. It's a mirror image, a sanitized mirror image of what the world is like. And I'm not sure that's such a good thing. I mean, it doesn't seem to, it's all, not only is it a mirror image, but it's sort of it's an intentional kind of self-removal from that. You've got your own version, it's sanitized, you don't have to associate yourself with this. That phrase, being in the world but not of the world, that's the mandate that Paul sets out for the people he was writing to. And I mean, that's interpreted in a lot of different ways, and I think a lot of people feel like if they're making their own culture that is clean or that is sort of sanctified, that it's okay. It's okay if we participate in this as long as these elements aren't there. And the problem is that a lot of the elements that aren't there are, in fact, it's the world. It's actually not being there. It's not being in those places where that stuff is happening, like a place like this.
I would take it a step farther, too, and say that in my own thinking about Christian spirituality, that this kind of alternate reality that Christian rock, the Christian subculture presents is not in fact spirituality at all, but it's born of fear. It's being afraid of sexuality, being afraid of being a human being. You're encouraged. There's so much guilt as a kid growing up in this culture. To make your thoughts pure, to not think sexual thoughts, to spend your time in prayer and spend time in the Bible every day, and this is how you become a holy person before God. It's a heavy trip to lay on a kid, and that's where I feel a lot of compassion for those people. And all of them are wrestling with that every day, because every one of them is a human being. But it's this power trip. It's a place for them to hide because they're afraid.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm here. Let me say for the record too, I don't think that that's what Christianity is about. I would still call myself a Christian. I've trusted, and my faith is in Jesus Christ. But that doesn't mean that I have to be afraid to be a human being. That should make me more of a human being.
Having grown up in this culture, I think we all feel a burden, not so much to the people who I feel a burden towards the people who also grew up in it, who were like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to deal with this. I can't, in good conscience, continue holding on to this if it's going to be defined in these terms. And I mean, the good news for the people who've already heard the good news is it's not defined by these things.
Is that the first Christian event that you have played?
Well, we played shows at
As a
Wheaton
band?
College.
We played shows at Wheaton College. Yeah, well, I mean that was really where we got our start.
And that was in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's funny too. Like those shows were really angry because that was during a time where all of us were really pissed. At least speaking for myself, I was really fucking pissed.
We had a lot to deal.
A lot on our plates, and it's become, as we've grown older and mellowed a little bit. It hasn't become maybe quite so confrontational, but recently we've been exploring some of we sort of swung the other way when we started playing in the city. It was
just a
like,
rock band.
we don't want to be about anything. We don't want to protest anything. We just want to play music. But more recently, we thought, like, at least I've thought in writing the songs, like, I need to explore some of this stuff again, and not like have an agenda with it or try to preach a message at all. Just speak from my own experience. I don't think that. I'm not going to say that what we do is art, because I don't think it is. But I'm going to say if you're involved in a creative venture, you should not be preachy with it. And that's a big problem that I have with the stuff at Cornerstone.
Yeah,
but to answer your question, that was really, yes, that was the first.
Did you have to apply, or?
Yeah. And we got in.
How
And what
did
do you have to-
prove?
How did we prove what? That we were worthy?
We kind of got in the back door.
Well, we knew someone who was running the event, and we have the priest at the church that we attend, Episcopal church that we attend, is has always been very supportive of us playing in the death halls. So he sent a letter of recommendation for us, and they really liked the music, so they let us in.
Well, these guys didn't want to do it.
I was a little hesitant. To tell you the truth.
There was Ben was putting up our bass player was putting up some pretty serious resistance. But I kind of wanted to do it, and I've never really talked about this with you guys, but I sort of wanted to do it as an experiment.
Yeah.
I wanted to have the experience. I wanted to go back into that whole scene again and do our thing and see what happens.
And we were prepared for people to be totally offended and not want to have anything to do with it, but that wasn't the case.
We did not set out to offend, but I was expecting to fly, and we really didn't get it. They were pretty cool.
Yeah. I think this is more about us trying to work out what has kind of, our demons, working out our demons, trying to deal with all the stuff that we've grown up with that has made life difficult and awkward for us in a way that it doesn't make life difficult and awkward for other people. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like I have a message to get out there by doing this project. I'm a lot more interested in, if I'm going to have an effect on people, having it in my everyday life. This is just music. It's entertainment. And that is what Cornerstone is about. It's. I have to say this, there is a lot of evangelism going on, what have you. It's entertainment.
It's entertainment.
It's entertainment.
Mass
pop
market.
culture. There's nothing wrong with that, but accept it for what it is. It's entertainment,
and it's bad entertainment.
A lot of
by
it
and large,
a lot of it is pretty poor. Some of it is excellent. Some of it is high quality. But people who are going to be honest with themselves, I think. And people who want to think about things deeply, eventually, they're going to burn out. Eventually, it's just going to ring hollow. And I think that's what ended up happening with all of us.
Yeah.
But when you've been taught your whole life that your eternal situation is contingent upon this culture or being a part of it, when all of a sudden you're like, this has no impact on me. You gotta figure out what to do. You gotta figure out what you're gonna do from that point on. And I think it's fair to say that there's a lot more than just what's going on at a place like Cornerstone. I think it's not a bad thing. I'm not going to denounce the festival. I think it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. And
Well, and I'll say too, and add quickly about Japuza. Like, there's a lot of things that they do that I find strange, but there's also a lot of social outreach programs they have that I think are very admirable.
Yeah.
And if you're going to try and conduct yourself as a Christian, are part of a mandate to reach out to the poor.
Yeah. Especially the kids who grew up.
The kids, man.
Especially the kids who grew up, like us.
Oh, they want desperately to shed this bullshit they had
Because they've had no choice. They were brought up by it.
And I had like an hours long conversation with a couple of kids after the show who wanted to know what that was, what just happened there. And like to use an evangelical phrase, my heart was really broken for that. It truly was. I was like, please.
And I mean, if there is an objective in what we were doing, and this is something that we've always tried to do, is make a really big, concerted, creative effort at making something that ultimately we don't really think is that important.
Right.
None of this stuff here we would consider to be, earth-shattering or, expressing our souls. We work really hard at it. We have a great time doing it, but at the end of the day, it's just a rock band. It's just a rock band with silly costumes, and I love doing it. But what it does for me is it establishes this separation between what is fun and okay to participate in, but ultimately not really important to me. I've got to give credit to people in the evangelical subculture who recognize that these are important questions. I mean, they've got that part absolutely right.
They're a little pent up. They're a little hung up, but they're asking questions all the time.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
There was a quote-unquote revival while I was at Wheaton College that you may not know about. And I would encourage you, if you don't know about it, to find some sources of it in books, because of course the college is capitalizing on this thing.
Capitalizing.
Enough said. A revival is defined as a spontaneous movement of God. And it's, in American Christianity, it is like the paramount. That is what you are pushing for. Revival in the land. A sweeping religious revival. Everybody's turning back to Christ. And I remember I was in my college dorm room, and my roommate burst in. He's like, "Jim, there's a revival going on." I'm like, whoa! So I went to check it out and see what was going on. And what it was lines of students in the chapel all week long. All week. Without ceasing. All day. And into the night. Walking up to a microphone and confessing their sin in front of the entire student body, and putting records, sex toys,
drugs,
bottles of beer, drugs,
putting it down, laying it down, giving it up,
laying it, and I remember, like, that was at a time where I was starting to just be like, this is really fucked up. But I remember sitting there thinking, listening to the people talk and talk about what they were going through, all of these, Christian golden boys and whatnot. They were going through the same things I was. The same things everybody else goes through, the same thing every human being struggles with. And that's where it hit me like, this is totally wrong, because all of us are going through the exact same thing. It's not any little thing that you do, or any addiction you may have, or obsession you may have. It's like everybody has those in their lives. That was a revelation to me in college, that quote-unquote revival.
And I mean, do people stop and think about the T-shirts that are there? I mean, some of them I found quite offensive.
Oh man, there was a bumper sticker, and Rush Limbaugh does this all the time. It just hit me on the day I was there, comparing abortion to the Holocaust. I was just like, oh my lord. You know, get this out of here.
Yeah, or just stuff as tawdry as, you know, like taking, you know, making the Burger King logo have a religious significance.
Have some sort of reference to Jesus using the burger.
That's just cheap. That's so
if not blasphemous. You know.
so, you know, that kind of stuff makes me highly uncomfortable.
Or the pink nun.
I kind of like the pink.
Now, the pink nun is cool. I had a friend, just a quick story, I had a friend that bought some of her purity panties and she returned them a year later. She's like, I'm sorry, just don't work.
But, you know, I think there is, I think, in the pink nun, like, something of a kindred spirit. It's someone who's not afraid to, like, kind of push the envelope a little bit, and
you gotta respect,
you know, I respect that, and you know, I respect what she's doing. I think it's courageous of her to say, you know, why don't we think about this as an alternative? Because it is so old hat, and it's
in that context though, I found it a little weird because that Cornerstone is so like there's so much sexual tension in the air, and no one can do a damn thing about it. You know. Like that was my experience.
Thus the panties.
Right, and that's that's why I was so creeped out. I was like, you know, it's just contributing to the hang-ups of untold numbers of kids.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, like those shirts and the sanitized, you know, cultural icons.
If the pink nun ever watches this, I think that you're cool.
Yeah.
I disagree with what you do, but no worries.
What is Pink Nun Products?
Pink Nun Products is a way of promoting healthier sexual choices and promoting choices for chastity and living a more pure life, protecting your heart and your mind from things like pornography and the culture at large that tells you that you're a sexual object, and it just encourages people to respect themselves and control themselves so that they can keep sex as sacred and make sex special within marriage in the ideal way that God made it. So I'm trying to encourage people in kind of a more empowering way or a more edgy way to say, you know, keep yourselves pure or control yourself the way you're supposed to and not think of sex as some kind of a need or go by an animal nature like culture would tell you to do. But to think of yourself as a little more than that and think of sex as a much more special thing, not just like another activity you're supposed to do with the person you're dating or something that everybody's supposed to do like TV or the movies would tell you to do, and but that it's a much more special thing, and it's an amazing gift that God gave us for when we make a commitment and when we come together as one with somebody. It's a bonding experience, and a lot of times since our culture is so based on consumerism and having everything now, you want it now and you want it fast and you want to just like fulfill all your cravings. That's what sex turns into being, is something just to consume, and we turn into objects to be consumed like fast food. So one of the slogans is "I'm not fast food," which is also kind of a pun on "I'm not fast," but you know, it's talking about the way that people are constantly kind of looking at each other in this craving way and lusting after each other because it's so driven in our minds. So a lot of what this also talks about is not feeding that into your mind and not building that desire with a lot of the stuff you look at, being a little more picky about the movies you watch or how much TV you ingest, and you know, along with the fact that there's so much advertising on TV and everything, that gets you to build those desires of like just, you know, instant gratification. So I guess it's about several things at once. It's not just an abstinence message, but it's about more purity. It's about more than just no sex. It's about having higher standards than that, like just kissing or, you know, not doing the everything but thing that's really popular within the church. And so I want to talk a little more about that to people because I think that the message isn't talked about enough in the church about sex, and a lot of times people they're all hush-hush about it. So I try to be a little more direct or forceful with it and at the same time, sometimes that causes some people to be offended or to think it's going a little too far, or I'm too much, within the world or using the world's language. But I guess I want to be a little more relevant to the culture at large instead of just like a Christian subculture, because I'm not preaching the converted, and I think Christians need to hear it just as much, but I want it to be aimed at just about everybody, and our culture is so based on this MTV kind of like, edginess, like it has to be like flashy and direct, and people are very attuned to that, so I'm trying to be a little more, make it a little more appropriate for that. But it also started when I was in art school, and I went to a liberal art school at the Art Institute of Chicago with very liberal surroundings.
We were kind of overhearing a bit of the conversation before we came, and what do you say to people who find it vulgar? I mean, are there people who accuse you of doing what you're preaching against by having your message be so out there? Killing the message with
impurity? I don't know. I do get some people coming up and saying, you're like making it sexual, and then slapping us on the hand and saying, don't be impure. But I think that I'm just trying to do it in a relevant enough way that it gets people out of their comfort zone, and it makes it memorable, I guess. I don't really even try to make it controversial. I guess it just ends up happening. Honestly, some of the slogans and stuff, I don't realize are even going to be a big deal. The fact that people even react to a slogan that says "I'm not your slot" just like surprises me, because I guess it's like I'm like narrowing down, female or male anatomy into words, but I'm trying to use a lot of puns to just make it memorable, so you have that slogan kind of in your mind. And I guess I've gotten enough encouragement that it cancels out some of the more negative things. I'm just more ready to go towards the side of almost going too far than not going far enough to make it memorable or make it memorable. And I don't want to be, I guess you could call it vulgar, but I don't really take that as a totally negative thing. I think that a lot of Christian bands, I kind of listen half and half to secular music and Christian music, and I tend to listen more to the Christian bands that are a little edgier, that I could have my non-Christian friends listen to, because I think that Christians are supposed to be in the world enough that they can speak to the people around them, not just like make safe music for other people in church. And so I think that music should be, I used to disagree with the whole switching over from the Christian scene to the secular scene, and I used to criticize like MXPX and bands like that would switch over. But I think that they can do a lot of good because they're more right where they're supposed to be than just like preaching to the converted. And so I kind of, from talking to bands and stuff, I really switched that attitude to knowing, that was like 6 years ago or something, and to knowing that's kind of what we need to do. It's fine to make Christian music for Christians, but there needs to be bands that are ready to go out there and talk to people and be real with people and make it relevant to them.
In the Christian community, and with kids that are in youth groups and in churches, a lot of the times that's what they're told by their youth pastors, by everybody who they see around them, and they'll be in like more of like a small Christian community versus being out in the real world with everybody else. So they're told, this is what you do, you listen to this, and you can only listen to this, and it's just a different scene, it's a whole different deal.
Why do they tell them that they shouldn't listen? It seems obvious.
The people like that, they zero on like bands like Marilyn Manson, who they think are like demoralizing America, and it's just like, so they just lump everyone who's not like singing basically like praise songs, like spiritual type music. People aren't singing songs directly relating to like, spirituality. Like just blatantly saying like God, Jesus loves me.
Worship? Is that what they call worship?
Yeah, like worship songs, but
not just worship, but
Yeah.
They're just Christian quote unquote lyrics, Christian content. You know.
Yeah. You gotta understand too, like when you're young, you really want to be part of something. I remember when I was in high school, I wanted to be part of like the band, skater scene. Like I played drums, and I wanted to like be in it. You know, for these kids, that's something for them to be part of. You know, to be part of like the Christian music scene, and like part of that is you gotta like just listen to those bands. You know, it's just like,
Separating yourself.
Yeah, like when you're just into like punk rock, you can't listen. Like if you thought that new Pearl Jam song was cool, you wouldn't tell your friends. Oh, I hate him too, dude. Eddie Vedder, whatever.
As far as newer like folk, kind of like new style folk, I like Innocence Mission. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They're totally underground and they're Amish.
They've been around for a while though.
They've been around for a while, but I mean, as far as they're younger people and.
Now, with a name like that, are they a Christian band?
This is another thing. They are Christians, but they're not in the Christian
Scene.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But,
Do you think that becomes a detriment when people, that people don't want to call themselves
it
that?
bums a lot of the fans out, I think, because they don't maybe fully understand the scope of why you chose to do that. And so they're like, really?
It all goes back to the wanting to belong to something. And like we started out playing shows, being booked by like this booking agent who put us in like a lot of churches and stuff, and like church halls and just wherever they could get us basically. So we were nothing. We were like playing to like 10 people or whatever. And as things got better, we started wanting to play clubs more, because as things go with those like church halls and stuff, it's kind of shoddy sometimes, and like things kind of like yeah, the PA, the dude broke down, he's not going to be here tonight, do you mind not playing with a PA, without a PA, is that cool? And so we started playing clubs more, because it just went a lot smoother, and there was always things that worked, and kids would be like, why? We're like, well,
why are you playing rock? Right.
Yeah, like these rock clubs are just set up for rock shows, we're not playing like with like the altar, you can't move that, the pastor doesn't want you to touch that. So it's just like
work around the steps.
Yeah, and like when we got off of Tooth Nail, which started out just only in the Christian music
So
team.
you used to be on Tooth Nail?
We were on Tooth Nail, and then we got off that and we went on A&M.
Okay.
And when we got signed to that label, people were like, "Oh, well, they're not Christians anymore." Like where you work has anything to do with your faith.
But like if I had a nickel for every time a kid comes up to me at a show, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you guys are still singing about Jesus and still talking about it, and you didn't sell out like MXPX." And those are the kids I totally want to punch from above. But I mean, it's just like okay, to me, like there's like in the church we have a word for this, and it's called legalism, and it's like when I think God reveals himself in different ways to different people. Like there's gray areas though, and I think that's why he gives us a conscience. And like legalism to me is where people take their own conscience, matters of their own conscience, and put it on other people. And it's like that's why people are like, don't listen to secular music, don't do this. Plus, like right now we're in the middle of the Bible Belt, so there's so much of this.
Do you guys have kids come up to you and say these things that they're saying? They don't say anything to you.
They used to a lot, but not lately. Not much.
I got asked. We were just talking about earlier by an interviewer. My band was getting interviewed at LA Times about 4 months ago or something, and so what do you guys think about MXPX? Are they still Christians? Well, what do you mean, are they still Christians? Like, I've known these guys since '93. Tom was like, these guys were still in high school when I met them. I think all you guys were.
Yeah.
And it was like, we were, label mates. We'd play together all the time. We got to hang out quite a bit. And I was just saying, if there's any guys that I've seen be the same guys they've always been, it's these guys. All three of them. I've never seen them do something different than they've ever done before. I think the Christian music industry, as far as things go, everybody realized, and I don't even regular general market labels like POD's on Atlantic, and my friends Brian, Project A6 are on Atlantic now, and there's different things. I think everybody's realizing there is bands in Christian music that are really good bands that are getting some attention from the general market, and it's just like every label wants to capitalize and make the money they can make because it's a business. Like you were saying, business is business. And, I as far as Tooth and Nail or 5 Minute Walk or anybody else. They want to get a band that's going to sell records that they can make money off of. That's what they do.
I just think people need to mellow out, you know, like so much of the church is like, instead of trying to find out who God is, it's like trying to find out like a pattern or like an easy way to you know, like what are you supposed to do? How do you go about finding God instead of just like going to God? You know, like it's so much about making up rules, or you know, like don't listen to secular music, don't go to a club, don't smoke, don't drink. Instead of just like, you know, like how does this, you know, like who is this God and what does he have to do with me? Why does he care? And I don't know, like I think that if kids kind of, you know, like fans approached it like that, instead of what can I listen to? What's okay? You know, like what's bad? There's just too many gray areas. I think you just gotta go to God and find out like what's good for you, like what he wants to do. There's like there's things in the Bible, okay, like John the Baptist didn't drink alcohol, but Jesus, his first miracle was making like many gallons of wine, and it was really good.
Norman mentioned that this afternoon at press conference.
Okay.
The exact same thing, that his confusion about the Bible and reading was.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, like John the Baptist didn't drink alcohol because he felt like it wouldn't be good for him.
But he ate bugs, and that was all right.
Yeah.
You're supposed to eat lots of floats.
So yeah, you just gotta like mellow out, figure it out. You know, like find out who God is on your own, and not listen to people's rules.
Yeah, I definitely think people forget to think for themselves, you know. Sit back and just enjoy life, you know, enjoy what they have.
It's really easy to let somebody do the thinking for you, and I think a lot of people look to bands to think for them. And that's an awkward position to be in, because I don't want to think for anybody because I can't take care of myself very well. And if it were anything, this festival is possibly the best one that I know of for not having the focus be on hero worship, really, because there's seminars and there's speakers, and it's more about community and arts and just trying to grow as Christians together. But some festivals are seriously with huge barriers and backstage and all the crap that goes on. Like, it's really hero worship, and I don't want to be in that position because I'm not good enough or smart enough to be idolized, you know.
Sure, yeah.
But it's really
Look at you.
yeah. But I think that's like it's weird because we capitalize on it, you know, because we're marketed and we sell records and it's how we eat.
Right.
So it's, you know, we're kind of stuck in the middle. But really, if I could change anything, it would be that we could still eat, but people don't really worship us. They just kind of experience this walk with Christ alongside us, and you know, maybe they can relate to what we have to say, and maybe they pray for us, you know. But it's more of a community and a partnership than hero worship, because that's really odd, I think.
Do you guys do you ever tour with secular bands, or are you pretty much
Most of the time.
really
Yeah.
playing
You guys
mostly
were
secular
together.
venues, or?
You guys really have Christian bands. You guys will do like your own tour and then have a regular band and then maybe a Christian band come. Like you guys had us come along with you for a little while with Shades Apart and MXPX, and my band got to open up for a bit. It was awesome, you know. It's like, you know, it's all normal venues. Everything. It's not like we're playing in churches or anything. It's a good mix of kids too. I mean, I'd say MXPX fans probably have the most balanced crowd. You know, it's a lot of Christian kids, a lot of non-Christian kids, and everybody hangs out, and it's totally cool.
There's never like weird fights like Christian.
Like
no, it's just like everyone gets along and it's cool and everyone has a good time, and you know, people see that the other side isn't like this weird freaky three-eyed monster or whatever, you know, it's cool. If you talk to any kid out there, they're all about like, you know, Christian music, you know, like about bringing people into the fold, you know, and getting them into God and everything. But then when bands go out and play with regular bands and regular clubs and play to non-Christian kids, they're like, sell out! They're selling out! And it's just like, hello, double standard. It's just, if I could tell them one thing, it'd be like, let it go out there and support it and like, bring all your friends and just make sure you're there helping it grow and like, get out to new people, because kids have written to us like, I was totally not even into God or anything to do with it. Just a really bad point in my life, and it was like just thinking about just ending my life. And I heard you guys, heard some other bands, and saw that there could be a different way I could live. And now I'm totally great and saved, and like I'm
That's what
feeling
music
better than
does
that.
for you.
Yeah. And so
Do you guys have, what was like your first breakout band that freaked you out and got you really into
Mine was The Cure, actually. That was the band that got me really into, like,
really into music?
yeah, just the first band that I just totally fell in love with.
Descendants really just got me into just
The belching on the beginning of the record is really,
What's that?
The belching.
Actually, I got live edge first. It was just like,
You're like,
live
this
edge
is
just
it.
from start to finish, just like song, song, just like it's rad. And I just like
Those guys are great.
I kind of listen. Well, yeah, I'm sure it is, but it doesn't matter.
Didn't sound like that back then.
It doesn't matter. But anyways, shut up.
Hey, I love that record.
But I mean, before that, I had just listened to like whatever was on the radio or on TV or whatever. I grew up watching MTV, and that was the first band that one of my friends was like, "Dude, check out this CD. You're gonna love it." And I was just hooked after that.
Well, the first tape I can remember having was Stray Cats, Rev It Up and Go, like in elementary school. I started listening to like Suicidal Tendencies and stuff that like I thought I was a skater, so like I had to like listen to skater music, you know,
Agent Orange.
all that, just Black Flag, and I actually, I got a hold of the Descendants and it was different. It was more melodic, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool, And I didn't know, like, to me it sounds different now than it definitely sounded then. Everything kind of changes once you get to know it more. But I just remember just being baffled by the whole thing. And then I hung out with a local band in Bremerton. Went down to right down the street from my house. They practiced, so I'd go down there after school every day.
They were a band that was around too.
Yeah, they were
This band
great.
had Juju from our hometown. They should have been way bigger. They should have been like up there with No Effects and stuff. They were that good.
They have records out?
No. I have a cassette tape from a video camera at one of their shows, and the songs.
Start your own record label.
It's
They're
really
dead.
bad.
That was like 10 years ago.
But I mean, like, I wouldn't want to put it out on there beyond the back. Anyways, point being, the songs I listen to them now, and they're still rad. Like, they still totally hold up. I'm just like, man.
They're kind of like Bad Religion with their own thing. I guess,
Yeah.
kind of their own twist.
Well, my guess is if you called them and said that you wanted to put out their record now, they'd be way psyched.
I don't even know where they are anymore.
Don't be
How about you?
I think, Scott, for me, I think it was, I grew up in Fullerton, California, and I listened to, like, when I was a kid, I listened to, like, Black Sabbath and Kiss, like, during the 70s, early 80s, then I think in 83 or 84, I got Mommy's Little Monster, Social Distortion. Somebody gave it to me on vinyl, and I got D.I. Ancient Artifacts, I got the Vandals, Peace Through Vandalism, and I got all these different records that I'd never heard of punk rock music before until that, and my sister dated Mike Ness when I was a kid.
Your sister dated Mike Ness?
Yeah. Well, amongst all my other friends' sisters too, but yeah. My sister and all my friends' sisters, but if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, that changed my life. That music. At first time I ever heard it, I Just Want to Give You the Creeps, that song, it changed my life. Like I put the needle down and it starts and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And that was what made me want to play.
So what was that like then meeting him?
Mike, when I was a kid, he only came around like late at night. My parents hated him. Because he had a big mohawk and he looked creepy with the dirty makeup. But I got a chance to hang out with Dennis Donnell a lot before he passed away. Because I was working at the Casbah with him at their studio, I was helping him quite a bit. Just as much as I could. He'd call me just like in the middle of the afternoon, hey, come right now, and I'd just go and help him because I was like this huge Social Distortion fan growing up, and I really respected them. So it was really cool. And,
Hanging out with your heroes.
That guy was like my hero, Dennis Donnell, and I didn't get to see Mike very much, but Dennis was a great guy.
Mike's a nice guy too. We did one song with him one time, and he produced it. And it was just in a little dinky studio, and we were all chilling. We were sitting on the couch, and he goes, "How's everything at home?" I was like, "Pretty good."
How's everything
Pretty good. I still live with my parents.
Yeah, we're just like, "How's everything? How's everything?" Because I was on the phone and stuff.
I was concerned.
Yeah, he was like, it was the weirdest
I think their music changed all of us though. Like it was a big influence on all of us. Yeah, for sure. Like huge influence on all of us. Oh yeah, like God, that music changed. Like seriously, freaked me out as a kid. I remember being in my room like in 5th grade listening to Mommy's Little Monster over and over again, and just like I just want to have eyeliner on. And
I remember seeing them with just tons of tattoos and just going like, I need tattoos.
Oh yeah, dude.
Well, there you go. You definitely got them.
No, these are temporary. I'm gonna get real ones eventually.
You got 'em on the
Those are you guys open
These are him.
I'm
getting real ones.
Because that's what, like, when I was a kid, I inherited all these records, and one of them was Who's Next, and on there, air drumming to Keith Moon is spiritual.
Yeah.
Like, I remember backing that up, or like Rolling Stones Painted Black, you know, songs like that. It was when I was this dorky kid in high school, and junior high, but I could listen to that stuff and feel like a rocker, you know. That was it for me.
So who's next?
Air drumming. Who's Next and Rolling Stones.
To Keith. Keith's inspiration.
Yeah. Keith, God bless him.
It's too embarrassing.
No way! I know exactly what I was gonna say too. This is the best. Go.
Come on.
Blondie? What are you gonna say?
No. Way cornier than Blondie.
Oh
When I
yeah.
was a little kid, like all I would listen to is classical music.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something worse than that.
It gets worse.
No, that was. Shut up.
That's my party.
I have your demo.
I know.
Okay. In high school band, we used to play like all these classical songs, and like I go out and like my friend's dad just had a library of classical CDs. We like listened to them, like the London Philharmonic, and I was just like, man, they suck. That's a rad song.
So that's your embarrassing.
No, Reese loved metal.
Yeah, I totally grew up listening to metal. Like, okay, I went from classical to
Come on.
our bass player, who was like my best friend in junior high. He's like, dude, you should try listening to this. He gives me all these Christian metal bands. So it's like Barren Cross, Petra, Striper, and like half those bands are here today. So, yeah,
That's the weirdest part of it.
It's pretty embarrassing.
I just remember you loving Striper.
Oh man, I love
I remember you told me you loved Striper.
I think, to me, an artist is always about not so much putting out their message so that other people will embrace that message. It's just simply to be them, express themselves. And if somebody else digs it, then that's cool. But the most important thing is, to me, rock and roll has always been, I have a very simple definition for it, amplified self-expression. It's like, who is this person? Who am I? And that's what rock and roll does. You express yourself. And I just think rock and roll, you know, punk especially emphasizes be yourself, be who you are. I think there's a fear maybe on the people on the outside who are perceiving Christian rock saying that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to convert me. And I think there is an element in Christian rock that is about converting people. There's no doubt about it. But I think the bands that who are really making artistic statements in this area aren't about, you know, the message bringing more converts into the fold. Because the problem with that is that it becomes about the converts. It becomes about this sort of other issue of bringing people into the fold as opposed to what is the art saying, what is the music saying. And the music and the art becomes secondary to it. But the bands that I think are really working in this realm really put the art and the self-expression first, and it's just a byproduct if somebody else buys into the message and says, cool, that's something I want to check out. There's nothing to be scared of here. There's nothing to shy away from. All the great artists have dealt with this issue at some point. You know, you look at literature, you know, Nabokov, or, you know, opera, or theater. Why not popular music? Obviously you have to deal with God, you know. At some point it's there. And whether you believe it or not, you know, there's nothing wrong with addressing it. People get scared of proselytizers. People get scared of evangelists. They're scared. Any rock fan is going to be turned off by an evangelist. You know, it's just those two worlds don't mesh. But if you can address it in a way that the great artists have addressed God and Christianity, I don't see the problem there at all.
Did I set out to reform the church's music, or was I just following God? Huh? Yeah, and the answer would be I was just following God. I didn't care about the church. I thought the church is already saved. What do I care what they think of me or if they ever hear any of my songs? This music is for non-believers, you know. So I was on Capitol Records and opening up for Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, The Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, just a whole bunch of bands. The Who. The band went on tour with The Who and Pete Townsend. I had written this thing called The Epic, which is a rock opera, and Pete Townsend stood backstage and watched it, and after the tour was over said he was going to write a rock opera too, and so he wrote Tommy, and his was kind of spiritual too. I think that people, other artists were affected by what we were doing in the band because they saw that there was really no limit about what you could talk about. It wasn't just about girls or surfboards, you know, and the People was a very strange band. We were probably what Daniel Amos is today. We're a very experimental art band who is writing about things that nobody had written about before. And I think a lot of artists were inspired because of that, you know. We before Buffalo Springfield ever got formed, we hung out with them in Sausalito and rehearsed with them, and I just think a lot of bands ended up liking us because we loved them, and because our music really wasn't trapped in any traditional way to the pop world. I think it was just a joyous thing for our fans and for other bands. Janis Joplin used to sit behind the curtain and watch us when we opened for her. She didn't usually do that for other bands, you know. That was kind of a compliment. I mean, what do I think about bands who share their message metaphorically in a way that's not very obvious? Should they be more specific? I don't know. Art is art. You can do what you want to. It's just you shouldn't be surprised if nobody ever becomes a Christian listening to your albums if there's not very much specific content in it. But I think it's fine to be a Christian and to do art and not to sing about Jesus if that's what God is allowing you to do. I think we're supposed to be obeying Jesus. I don't think we tell God what our art is going to be. I think we should be asking God, what does He want to do with our lives? And I don't think we set aside something, go, God, I'll follow you forever, but not in my music. I'm going to do it my way. I think we should just let God inform the whole aspect of our life. And if you end up writing artistic songs that don't mention Christ, and if that's what God's inspired you to do, that's probably going to help people through the power of the Holy Spirit. I'm not saying that everything has to be propaganda. I don't think art should be propaganda ever. I try to even write the most direct messages that I'm trying to give in an artful way so that it has expression and has some power of poetry, because I don't believe in propaganda. Propaganda is when you don't trust the Holy Spirit and you think you have to tell everybody and you harangue and you bash them. I don't think that I think that denies the power of Christ. Yeah, I grew up in the church and I didn't really understand it until I was 5. I used to listen to sermons and try to figure it out. And I was a very thoughtful kid and confused by all the inconsistencies in the sermons, because we were told in church that it's wrong to dance and it's wrong to smoke and it's wrong to drink, but then in the Bible it says Jesus changed water into wine, and it says David danced before the Lord, and there was no cigarettes in the Bible, so that didn't bother me. But I just didn't get it. And then an evangelist came to town, and I went to the Civic Auditorium with a lot of people. It was a big meeting. And after the sermon, he said, if someone would like to receive Christ, come down. And I asked my father, can I go down? And he said, no, you're too young. And nobody went forward. And the evangelist said, I think there's at least one person who wants to become a Christian. And I told my dad, that's me. And my dad said, okay, go. So I went down the front, became a Christian, and that was it. I started witnessing to my friends at school, and started talking to winos on the street. You know, they'd be sitting there doing nothing. I thought, how old were you? I was 5, 1952. So I just loved preaching the gospel and evangelizing. I wanted to be a missionary, but that didn't work out. From a personal standpoint, what would be, it's an obvious question, but what would be your definition of Christian music? There's a lot of different definitions I find, but I'm just wondering, what would you guys say it is?
Well, just from my personal perspective, Andrew's smiling. She knows Adam's got a good answer. From my personal perspective, I know people say this all the time, but I don't really consider there to be a difference between Christian or secular music. There's bands out there that are Buddhist and stuff, but we don't call them Buddhist bands and things like that, you know. I think, you know, where Christianity lies is within within yourself. And regardless of what I did, whether I would be making this music or let's say I was a math teacher, I don't think if I was a math teacher, I wouldn't call myself a Christian math teacher because I'm not really teaching Christian math. I'm a Christian and I'm a math teacher, but where my faith lies and where my ministry lies and where it starts and ends is with my life. And regardless of what I'm doing, whether it be making music or whether it be teaching school, who I am is because of what God has made me in my life, personally. And so to me, it doesn't, Christian music isn't, you don't stand up and just because you say Jesus 40 times in a song, that doesn't make you a Christian band. You're a Christian because God has touched your life and changed your life, and you're a child, you're His child now. Your life is not your own. And just as whereas if you're a math teacher, it would be the same thing. God touched your life and changed your life. But 2 + 2 doesn't equal Jesus. 2 + 2 = 4. And to me, when you run into that, should you only play Christian shows? Should you only do this? Well, if you're a math teacher, should you only teach at Christian schools? I don't think so. I think we need them out there in the public schools. Kids are hurting out there. I'm not saying kids aren't hurting in Christian schools as well, but I think the whole point is just to remember that your ministry starts with your life and how you live it and what you do from day to day. And if you're living for God and if you're His child, then your life is your ministry, regardless of what you do.
If you're a Christian, you're in a band, you should try to be, don't settle for less. Be the best you can be. You should do it for God's glory, I think God's glorified when we're using our creative abilities to their utmost potential.
Yeah, whatever gift God has given you should use it to glorify Him and use it to the best of your ability. Give it your all. Don't be mediocre about anything. And I also think if we start, categorizing things, what are we gonna have next? Christian football leagues, Christian basketball leagues for all the Christians who play that to join. You just gotta get out there and be in the world, and be yourself and be who God has, turned you into. And when God grabbed my life, He changed me, and He transformed me. And I'm out in the world every day, and that's who I am now,
Just a quick question. Can you talk about the song Bums Over Broadway and what that means?
That whole album, and especially that song, and a couple of other songs on the album, were written around the whole 2000, changing of the millennium or whatever. Y2K deal. So I figured there's so much talk about it on TV and the radio and whatnot that I'd write a couple songs about it. And that song just basically is about the pride of man and how we as a society and we as mankind think that we're unstoppable. And the whole song just talks about, we basically uses New York as a symbol of everything that we've created and everything that man has made and that we've made ourselves to be, and the sudden and unexpected demise of it. And that's pretty much what it's about. And it's just about how it's pretty much like how the Bible says, man's wisdom is foolishness to God. And we think we're so wise and we think we're unstoppable. And in the end, we all die. And that's pretty much what the song's about. Good question.
Most of my life I've experienced another good news. And that another good news is prevalent. It's the majority in a lot of ways. It's just the majority of what we see. Maybe not the majority of people, but the majority of what we see, and the majority of non-believers ideas of what the gospel is completely another good news. It's completely another gospel than that Christ truly revealed and that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, period. They've added this, they've added that. Can't smoke, don't be gay, don't do this, don't do that. Sin is sin. And Jesus took it all on for us. But we seem to numb it out. We seem to block it out. We come to things here and we say, well, you're dressed inappropriate, or your music's inappropriate. Or I had one guy who's brought a bunch of kids up here, and a couple kids weren't saved and they weren't cussing. And the people are like, hey man, don't use profanity. This is a Christian place. It's like we've become so numb to the world. It was Paul who said don't go into the world. It was Jesus who said go into it. And the Paul thing's always taken out of context anyway. But who are you going to trust on that one? I'm going to stick with Jesus every time. Call me crazy, call me a nut. People say, well, this looks like that and this offends me. Well, do you think the fact that Jesus hung out with hookers didn't offend everybody? Do you think the fact that Jesus hung out with tax collectors didn't piss people off? Oh. That made me pissed off that you said pissed off. If you ever want to see me again, I'll be speaking at Revolution next year at the 4th of July. And thank you for having me. But there's another good news. And it's devastating and killing people. I'm watching my best friends die. Yes, it is. And through all that legalism, people feel rejected and hurt. So our ministry has been based on just going out to people, building friendships with them, and loving them for who they are. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're bisexual. I don't care if you're tattooed from head to toe. I don't care if you're in a 3-piece suit. I don't care if you're Baptist. I don't care if you're Catholic. I'm going to love you just for who you are, because that's how Christ has shown me my love. Love for me. And that's what I've seen from this word, is that God loves us all, period. When we grasp onto this other good news, it says, look this way, act this way, be this way, treat people this way. Let's raise the standard. Let's raise the bar. When Christ, really, he didn't come and raise a bar. And some people might want to come and argue with me, and that's, I don't want to argue with you guys, really. I don't want to debate. I'm not here to do that. If you want to debate and you feel persistent that it must happen, please come back to my tent and talk to me there. Let's not do it here, and try to make sure my wife's not there, because I don't want her to have to see that. See you die. I'm just kidding. I am such the grace pastor. Now he's sending a clear message to the Judaizers. He's letting them know that you'll be cursed by God if you throw these people back into the law and back into legalism. But we've thrown each other back into the law and back into legalism for the past few hundred years. Every time something's invented, it's of the devil. TV was invented, it's of the devil. Do you know this true fact? When the fork was invented, that Christians didn't use it for 20 years because they thought it was God's hand. It was the devil's way of God not having us use our hands. For 20 years, golly, longer than 20 years, for almost like 40 years, until Stryper came along. Christian music didn't really get that good. You're like, well, we can't rock too much. That wouldn't be good. Well, Jay, that doesn't make sense. When I went to youth camp, they told me to stop smoking, and they told me to stop cussing, and they told me to break up with my girlfriend or my boyfriend, and stop doing this and that. These people are saying God accepts you if. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. That is a lie from the devil himself. Remember, Colossians 1:22, you're holy and blameless in the sight of God. But if we love too much, we become any of the Gospels. If we give out sandwiches at a Marilyn Manson concert rather than protesting it, we get in trouble. If we sit on a AIDS board, we get protested rather than if we protest it. If we go out and hold the hand of a girl who's having an abortion, why she's having an abortion? Because she didn't want to make another choice. We get protested because we're not being protesting, and we're not showing them dead pictures of fetuses and calling them murderers. That's not, I'm sorry. I don't want to step on some people's feet here because I love and respect a lot of your beliefs. But love never demands its own way. Love never gives up. Never loses faith, is always hopeful. Endures through every circumstance. Every circumstance. But we're not seen as people who endure through every circumstance. We're seen as people who can't endure through crap. We just want to get rid of everything. Got to get rid of all the sinners and all the sin. And we've ostracized ourselves from the world. I would love to see Social Distortion or Rancid or Propaganda or something like that be invited to Cornerstone next year. Maybe Bob Dylan. That's somebody we need to have back. Say sorry we pushed you in the limelight too fast and just tore you to shreds and judged you. We love you and we're gonna accept you. Five. I got 5 minutes. What is important is that we don't give up on people, that we endure through every circumstance with people, that we don't demand our own way with people, that we just accept them. That's what love is, accepting them. Hate the sin, love the sinner. Eventually you will hate the sinner. Just love. Love, love, love. Love the person, look past the sin. Oh, Jay, don't say it. Look past the sin, brother. Can't do that. We gotta do it. Because you can't change anybody. You can't keep them from sinning. That's why Jesus died. If we could do that, there would be no need for him to die. If this book could do that, there'd be no need for him to die. He knew we could never be perfect.
Tell me a little bit about the festival. Do you come here often?
Actually, this is my first year.
Yeah? Yeah. What brought you here?
Well, my brother-in-law and sister were coming with my nephews and some friends of ours, and I just wanted to come and hang out. And I really was drawn to the seminars more than the concerts.
Really?
Even though there's a few bands that I really want to see, but the seminars really drew me.
What are you looking for? I mean, is there a purpose?
Well, particularly the passages one, dealing with sexual, just the sexual past and sin, and just dealing with that and redemption.
And you're looking for answers for that, or?
Yeah, answers, just kind of some resolution, just some things that I've struggled with personally in my own sexual life, and just personally, just coming just through scripture reading and my own private kind of coming to a reconciliation with God with some things. I just wanted some affirmation of some of the things I've been doing and dealing with sin in my life, and I just wanted some new perspectives.
Right.
As a Christian, I just wanted that as a Christian young person from older believers.
Right. Do you feel you need that? Do you feel you're pressured in any way, or?
Pressured in?
Yeah, I mean, like if you're dealing with these issues, and do you feel like there's undue pressure from your parents, or maybe, because I'm sure there's different sides. I'm sure you have like your family's opinions on, what you're feeling. You have like some friends, and they might have different opinions on it. And
yeah, well,
does the struggle? Do you think does it come from? I mean, where does it come from? Why you feel that?
The struggle that I really see as the most prominent in my life is between my own flesh and the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God in the Bible telling me to do one thing, and myself saying, no, I don't want to do that, I want to do this. That's the biggest struggle I face. Peer pressure isn't all that big in my life, but and parental pressure, I mean, they all play a factor, definitely, of course, but I see more of the obedience issue that's more of a factor.
Do you feel you're being, is part of it like you feel you're being untrue to yourself, or you know, do you feel like you're disappointing yourself, I guess I should say?
Disappointing myself and not yielding to sin, or?
Well, yes, that. I mean, I'm sure there's several different. Let's just move on. Let's move on to a happier topic
okay.
right now.
Oh, that's fine. That's interesting.
Well, certainly. I mean, if you know, I guess let's ask this: like, what kind of schooling do you have? What's your atmosphere?
Well, I've been homeschooled for the past 8 years, and I was in public school up until 5th grade, and so through my homeschooling and just the connection I had with my parents and my sister, I don't know if I would have ever, without that without my being that relational with my family, I don't know if I would be at the place where I am now, just because I wouldn't have had to confront the issues in my life, because I would have had lots of other distractions. So I've really found comfort in my family. There's obviously issues I still need to deal with them, and I need to, you know, make reconciliation in all areas, like every person has to do.
Right.
But I feel like with my family, it's just been very strong.
I feel like this gentleman had a lot to offer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
John Smid and Mario Bergner are excellent speakers. They represent Christ very, very well. They don't sway to the right or the left. They're very firm on the biblical perspective on sexuality, and I believe it's a very pertinent topic for a seminar at Cornerstone.
Do you think you might try to approach your mom with some of the things you're feeling with? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah.
What's your home community?
I am not
just family, but you know.
Yeah,
friends
most of my friends are Christians. Like neighbors and family friends, we have a number of non-Christian friends, and but mostly I'm surrounded by a good community of Christians, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So.
The non-Christian friends you have you like come to them with some of the issues you've dealt with? Have you confided in any of them?
No, I've never confided in a non-Christian friend about any of the struggles that I have. I have witnessed to non-Christian friends, non-Christian acquaintances, but I've never confided them in issues because I know that they wouldn't have anything spiritually to offer me because they don't have the Spirit of God within them.
But you're not. Are you curious as to what their opinions might be? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, opinions are interesting, and it's good to hear their own perspective. But it's really I try to seek out Christians and the opinions they have, because I feel like those are more likely to be grounded in the truth and not in other places.
So you don't necessarily feel, I'm assuming your family kind of believes the same thing, homosexuality in general, because some people believe it's like a genetic thing that you're born with it, some people believe that you choose it. You know, what side do you more lean toward, or do you think your family supports?
Well, I appreciate what John Smid had to say, because he said that homosexuality is not a choice, but he said that homosexuality is a reaction, and it is a behavior. It does. Homosexuality comes, as John Smid said, from a conspiracy of factors, and you make a choice to do certain behaviors, but no, I do not believe it is. You are not born homosexual. And John Smid says there is not a homosexual person, there's not a heterosexual person, not a bisexual person. People are male and female, male or female, and we have to fit our sexuality within the biblical framework, which is, as God established from the very beginning, one man and one woman for life. And outside of that, you may only have sex, or you can only have sex within marriage, but there's no sex outside of marriage, outside of the marriage of a man and a woman.
So you feel pretty comfortable in this community? Like, is a group on a whole, the festival and everything?
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's been fun, just kind of hanging out, meeting new people, different people that believe in Christ and stuff. It's been interesting. It's been neat.